Hello everyone joining us from Zoom and Facebook. I hope you're all connected successfully, and if there are any problems, please let us know either here or as a comment on the Facebook Live, and we will try to fix that. My name is Amy, and along with Carla and Camilla, I'm representing the ISPOR KI student chapter. I'm going to briefly hand over to Megan, who will talk about the alumni service. Sorry, you're muted, Megan.
Hello, everyone, wherever you are logging in around the world. My name is Megan Osler, and I run the KI Alumni Office. And we sit in the Education Support Office near the Career Service Office at KI. And one of my great pleasures in this role is to connect students with alumni and vice versa. I find these sorts of experiences, events, very valuable for both sides. So I'm really happy to support this Lunch and Learn series with alumni supported by the ISPOR student chapter. I don't want to take up too much time so we can get started with the event, but if you'd like to know more about the Alumni Office and what we do, you can look on the KI website. So thanks, Amy.
Thank you. So a little bit about today's event. Today we are joined by Richard Cowburn. With a background in neuroscience, Richard has experience as a professor here, followed by R&D at AstraZeneca. Today he works at KI facilitating corporate partnerships with industry, which is going to be the focus of his talk today. The talk is going to last for about 20 minutes, followed by a Q&A. If you have any questions throughout the talk, you can leave them in the chat on Zoom or as a comment on the Facebook Live, and we'll make sure that they're answered at the end of the session. Welcome, Richard. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm handing over to you now.
Good, thanks, Amy, and thanks for the introduction. So I don't need to say anything more about myself. As I said to the others before we went live, just a quick disclosure, I'm not an expert on real-world evidence, far from it. My main expertise is in setting up and managing industry partnerships on behalf of Karolinska Institute. Having said that, a lot of what I've been involved in setting up since about 2005 actually is based on questions relating to real-world evidence, health outcomes, epidemiological studies, really as a way to understanding disease complexity together with experts here at KI and together with our industry partners. But what I thought I'd do was really just put these real-world evidence partnerships in the context of what Karolinska Institute is all about as a university when it comes to working with industry, and then also exemplify the way we have worked as a university with these kind of questions around real-world evidence, and just pick up some of the different collaboration models that we have used there, and the ways of working with industry. One thing that I explained to the others before we went live, I think one of the frustrations I think is that we have not yet landed when it comes to student engagement in a lot of what we do with industry, and there's obviously room for improvement there. But it's on our ambition, our to-do list, in order to integrate what we do with industry with student education programs, allowing students the sort of opportunity of working with industry, getting a taste of what it's like to work in industry, and really understanding what industry is all about. So as in my introduction, I do have a background as an academic, as an Alzheimer's researcher, but I also spent a few years working in industry. So I have a kind of the feeling of what it's like to work in both worlds, and also a feeling as to what you can do actually together by collaborating between those two sectors. So one thing that we've learned really at Karolinska Institute is what we do with industry is not necessarily just a case of industry accessing the knowledge or the ideas or the intellectual property or whatever that's been generated from the university. There's very much been a shift in the way we work with industry, where we think about creating opportunities together, but the idea of co-creation, the idea of building knowledge together. It's easy to say that, and it's much harder to do in practice, because you have to spend an awful lot of time trying to understand your partner, trying to understand what they need from a partnership, and where one can establish synergies between what you want to do and what they want to do. But what I'm very keen on doing is creating partnerships whereby neither Karolinska Institute or the industry partner would have thought or been able to do something in isolation, and that we become interdependent upon each other in order to actually do cool science and ask interesting questions. This slide really just summarizes, I think, basically my ambition and the ambition of a lot of people at KI to try and create some kind of structure and longevity in what we do with industry, whereby you create very strong governance structures around what you do, you create very strong accountability, and you try upfront to agree as much as possible around what you intend to do in a partnership, what each of the partners is bringing to the table, ownership and exploitation of any results, intellectual property that's generated from those partnerships. But also, as I said, try to also integrate those with education programs, and also less so actually in the real world evidence space, but with other types of partnership, try to recognize the possibilities of actually commercializing some of the research findings that may come out of those partnerships. Now, those of you that are familiar with the Swedish system understand that life science is very, very highly prioritized by the Swedish government, irrespective of who's in power. So all the power brokers, if you like, both in the various departments, various ministries, if you like, within the government.
Richard, can I just jump in for a second? The slides are not changing on the screen.
Really?
That you've shared with us.
That is not good. Hold on. What do they look like now?
It's just the kind of introduction. It's the first slide, the title slide.
Hold on. Let me go back to. I'm trying to get back to the meeting control in order to be able to stop the slide sharing. Hold on. I can't seem to be able to do that, which is a pain.
We'll just have a see if we can do that for you.
Hold on. It's not coming up on my screen here. Let me do something different here.
I'm just going to disable your screen share.
Yeah, okay.
And hopefully we can allow it back. Somehow.
What does that look like on your screen?
All the slides.
I'm sorry?
That's all of the slides.
Yeah.
Thumbnails.
Hold on. And now?
It's still all of the slides.
What does it look like now?
We have the slides. The intro.
But not in full screen. You have them on preview mode. No?
Yeah, we have preview mode.
Okay, when we can, but they're still visible on preview mode because I might have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good. So as long as you can see these, you can see the text. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll carry on preview then in that case. So that just summarizes what I said in terms of creating the governance and structure around what we do with industry. As I was leading into here, I mean, Sweden prioritizes healthcare, life science very strongly. Now I've got a message to start my video.
Yeah, your face is not visible to us, sadly. That's it.
Well, I'm not sure it's that sad, but never mind anyway. Bearing in mind we're recording this. So, I mean, in terms of Swedish strengths in working in this space, which I think are relevant to working with healthcare data and real-world evidence, is that we have a well-functioning healthcare system. We don't have a national healthcare provider, which is part of one of the challenges, I think, of working in this space, that we have a regional-based healthcare system. But having said that, we do have a long history of working with healthcare data, which obviously is if you like, the fundamental cornerstones of being able to work with real-world evidence, health outcomes kind of questions. I think the last point also is very relevant for working in this space and also for working with industry, is that the Swedish population in general are very trusting. They're very trusting of scientists. They believe in science, which is not always the case in other parts of the world, maybe. But they trust that scientists and decision makers actually take care of their data and manage their data in a manner which shows some degree of sort of ethical and legal compliance. So very trusting of the way you work with science and the way we work with data, which again is a good cornerstone for being able to work in this space. Now, coming to the next slide, this is just a very brief overview of KI Strategy 2030, but there are three major pillars to what KI is about in terms of what it wants to do and improve on. And so obviously, most people understand that KI is groundbreaking, does groundbreaking great science. But a lot of what we do as a single faculty university, if we want to realize the potential of what we do from our science, we really need to engage with, we need to collaborate with society, different actors around us. And that obviously includes industry, it includes healthcare providers, it includes patient organizations, it includes other public and private bodies. But we also have a strong focus on using and exploiting, if you like, our global trademark. And Karolinska Institute is known by many people around the world, and I guess particularly today, now that the Nobel Prize has just been announced this morning. So, you know, people know kind of what we're about, and we use our presence and our trademark and our reputation in order to work at the global, on the global sphere. And a lot of what we do, obviously, in the field of real-world evidence and health outcomes, is done together with global pharma industry, and these really are our partners in this kind of space. I'll jump over this because I realise the time is going quickly, but this kind of just summarises, you know, KI and where we see. So we've done an awful lot of research over the years when it comes to real-world evidence kind of questions based on a rich registries, epidemiological studies, based on a well-functioning healthcare system, but also based on having built up capabilities, particularly within biostatistics. I think there's still room for further capability build and expert build, particularly when it comes to sort of machine learning and artificial intelligence and those kind of technologies. But I mean, we have a good track record of working with patient data, and then we can also link a lot of what we do to the existence of well-functioning biobanks and all genetics, and also all the omics, as well as lifestyle and environmental factors. So we can ask some really cool questions in this space. Now, at the Nordic level, we know that the Nordic countries, Sweden included, that have worked for many years when it comes to being able to link data from national quality registers, which contain individualized data on you, me, and everybody that lives in Sweden, around what kind of disease indications they have, what interventions they've seen, what were the procedures for those indications, and what were the outcomes. And all this information is integrated into clinical workflows. You can use it for decision making, and you can use it for being able to make smart decisions around patients, the kind of treatments that they should be given at the end of the day. And the other thing that's quite unique about the Nordic situation is the fact that we have unique personal ID numbers, so that we have all these databases with all numbers and points and data on all those individuals, but we can cross-reference the data from all these by using our personal IDs. And the other thing about these databases is one of them go back and they have multi-generational data, which allows you to follow trends and patterns within families, within communities, within society. This is just a graph that shows that basically the major steps that have been made in establishing, if you like, big data sets in it. And you can see it goes way, way back to, I joked when I presented this last week to an American organization, it goes back to the Declaration of Independence, before the Declaration of Independence, Megan. So, you know, in Sweden, we've been working on this data for very many years. And it's obviously a national priority to build these data sets, but also to use them. So how do we use them then? So KI, like I said, has very extensive experience of working with this. And a lot of what we did originally was pioneered by a number of PIs. And it was based on answering questions that were relevant to the disease indications that they were looking at. And particularly Lars Klareskog, who's now a senior professor here at KI, has a very strong interest in rheumatology and autoimmune disease immunology. And he built up strong collaborations with a number of industry partners for evaluating drug safety and effectiveness, using the registers and using the biobanks, but questions relevant to his research. And a lot of those learnings have really been cut and pasted to other researchers here at KI. Lars is a very generous person, and he has shared those learnings in order to create an environment and experience of working with industry in and around these questions. But again, they're very much based on his and his colleagues' research interests and the kind of projects that they run. Now, in 2005, KI set up the Center for Pharmacoepidemiology, and this was basically to provide more commissioned research kind of facility towards industry, whereby an industry partner would come in and say, okay, we have this really interesting question that we need to get an answer to based on accessing some of the registry data. Can you help us? Can you help us write a program? Can you help us write an ethical permission in order to be able to access the data so you can help us answer these questions? And that model, like I said, is much more commissioned research. It works extremely well because they know what to do, both in terms of how to write project proposals, how to get ethical removal, how to access the data that's based in the registries, and how to understand, you know, the needs of industry and how to match up with them. Now, coming back to what we then at the bottom is what we try to set up or have set up, going back to 2015, is a much more structured way of working based on collaborative agreements. So many PIs have experience relative to their own research questions, their own research fields, but how do you create learnings for a larger organization? And this is really the ambition of what we try to do, or have been doing with Janssen over the years, and with MSD, and more recently with Biogen, is to create umbrella agreements whereby PIs from multiple departments can set up projects with companies, and then you can spread the learnings, you can work with multiple departments, and you can create a level of competence that spreads throughout the organization and isn't just linked to individual PIs. And that's the way I've been working in recent years around these much more, if you like, structured umbrella partnerships. So the first one I set up was in 2015 with Janssen, and that partnership was very much based on real-world evidence questions. It's been extended twice, so we've created some kind of longevity, and we've also expanded that partnership to include real-world, to actually include their research and development. So the original partnership with Janssen was set up with their health outcomes branch of their organization based in Belgium, and there we set up 5 programs, not just projects, but programs with multiple projects within, in treatment-resistant depression, psoriasis, oncology, B-cell malignancies, and prostate cancer, and also a 5th program around method development. And then we basically cut and pasted a similar model in 2016 to work with MSD, where we also have a structured, well-functioning partnership around different questions. And the partnership is actually structured in a different way, but they both serve to identify and resource projects coming from multiple departments and multiple PIs here at KI. And as I said, the Janssen partnership has been extended also to include their R&D organization, not so much based on real world evidence, health outcomes kind of questions, but more based on accessing data to feed into early drug discovery programs, to be able to understand disease mechanism and to be able to potentially identify novel targets for various disease indications. And there we have programs running in Alzheimer's disease, multiple myeloma and lung cancer, and a number of projects actually coming through the pipeline. So these are nice examples of the way you create longevity, structure, and around what one wants to do with industry. This is the last slide, and it just exemplifies, again, coming back to the kind of value creation you can see in this space, is that these are the kind of questions that we've been addressing together with Janssen over the years. So a lot of them based on population epidemiology, understanding overall disease burden at the population level, understanding patient flows and what kind of data is being used for decision making when a patient comes into the healthcare system. Understanding different treatment patterns, obviously linked to that is, you know, what particular therapy do you choose to use for a patient at any particular time, and what triggers change in therapy linked to that individual. And then I guess, and this is the fourth point, is a huge challenge, obviously, when it comes to age-related diseases with multiple comorbidities, really trying to use this data to understand the complexity of disease and understanding how other comorbid conditions can actually influence the outcomes and the treatment decisions you're making for your primary indication. And then because of the longevity, you can also think about, you know, well, what's happening over time? What were the treatment patterns used 10 years ago compared to what they use now? And where can you identify future unmet need at the population level? And then going to the right-hand side, a lot of focus in loss in expectation of life. If you think about decision-making, somebody who basically, particularly in the oncology field, when it's not necessarily a question of curing them, but it's a question of giving them 5 or 10 more years of life, well, what would be, how do you look at the, if you like, the health economic value of changing life expectancy? Also, being able to understand unmet medical needs, you can dig into questions relating to something that probably wasn't obvious when you started looking at a disease, and what are the needs of other disease indications. A lot of emphasis then on also creating surrogate endpoints for what you want to look at when you make an intervention. And also linked to this is also using the real world evidence to be able to make better clinical trial design in the future. And then the other questions linking to disease outcomes, exposures, and linking that to all the omics data, and then also survival rates, linking to the different interventions. So these are the kind of questions that we have been able to create value for Janssen. And from a university perspective, also create a lot of learnings as to how our industry partners work with this data. But a particular value, I think, for the university is also to understand a lot of the methodology that industry partners use when it comes to number crunching, how they work with machine learning, how they work with artificial intelligence, and those kind of questions from an industry perspective, and how we can apply that to what we want to do as a university. So I'm going to stop there. I ran somewhat over time. It was only going to be 20 minutes, but I've had a bit of problem at the beginning. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Richard. That's fine to go a little bit over. We still have 15 minutes for questions, so if anyone wants to fire them out, they can. I guess I'll kick off by saying we were speaking a little bit before the event, talking about how your role is mostly to do with kind of the research level, with PhD students even. How do you imagine that this could be expanded to kind of other educational programs? Master students could get more involved in these collaborations, for example.
So one thing we did with the ANSOM when we first set up is we kind of based it on a postdoctoral research program. And I think one of the things that we learned there is obviously the technicalities, the challenges of running a research program when you have somebody that is doing the work and sees it as part of their education. And I think when we linked it to educational programs, in this case, like I said, postdoctoral programs, some of the projects became very limited when it came to how you wanted to resource them with various competences. So I think one of the keys to this is to get a good balance between how you resource programs with expertise. And you can actually use the flexibility of students to be able to do things on the project and use them as a, if you like, a flexible workforce. Together with the industry partners, I mean, not to exploit them as a workforce, but to use them to be able to do things in a flexible manner within the projects. So I think that is a really nice way of working with students and bringing them on board. It's like, because always within a project, there will come up new things that you would want to explore, and it may not be core to the deliveries of the project, but it may be something nice to know that you won't otherwise just put on the shelf and nobody would work with it and nobody would look at it. But if you have a student coming in and saying, okay, we identified this is a really cool, nice to know question, you can have that as a student project and bring those on board. I think there's a lot of scope for being able to engage students with interesting questions linked to that come out of the projects that we run there. How we then do that in practice at the university is another question, because I think one of the challenges as a university is a lot of our education programs are very, very structured. And so how do you find time for the students to actually take the time out and then to work within the collaborative projects we have with industry? I don't think it's a question of resourcing them or paying them salaries or paying them as stipendia or anything. It's more a practical question of how we actually work to integrate our education programs with what we do with industry.
And would you?
I'm sorry?
I can go ahead.
No, perhaps there's a way to combine the thesis work that master's students have to do during the final term with some sort of industry collaboration. I'm not aware that this is a centrally supported idea, but perhaps with enough questioning from students that this could be brought up as a potential idea.
Yeah. I think a related question, and I think again this is a structural question, is that, and it comes around to increasing competences, and I've discussed this a lot internally at KI, is how do we educate the next generation of biostatisticians or bioinformaticians so that we can have a well-trained future workforce for being able to collaborate with industry and also to run these kind of projects together. But again, I think a lot of our education programs are very, very structured. So we need to think differently around that and think about how you can organize joint webinar sessions, how you can organize joint seminar series, and create much more flexible education programs around these kind of questions that would fit into the current more sort of structured and less flexible education ways of working that we have as a university.
Cool, thanks. So we've got one question from Facebook, which I think is about your kind of office, and it's who works this partnership from KI. So I guess it's what your role is directly and who else is involved.
That's a great question. I can tell you how it works today, and it may be different as of the 1st of January. So traditionally, Karolinska Institute has worked very, very decentralized with industry partnerships. So much of what I said in terms of the Center for Pharmacoepidemiology and those partnerships with individual PIs obviously are established and managed out in the organization. I sit centrally, so I sit central administration at KI Grants Office with a number of colleagues. And where we are working is to basically create a hybrid model. So where, you know, maintain everything that is happening out there in the organization, but to provide some kind of back office support for those that have their own industry partnership programs, but also to manage both the setting up and the management of these kind of partnerships that we have with Janssen and MSD. And in that way, you can create learnings at the organizational level, but you can also provide support and create, if you like, best practice and learnings as to how you engage with industry, how you work with industry. I don't have a personal agenda because I'm no longer a researcher, so I work on behalf of KI. I work on behalf of our researchers and our students. And so in that way, it's a very privileged position because I can see the opportunities and say, okay, well, what can we do with Lyme? What can we do with career service? What can we do with UBE? What can we do with the other actors in order to bridge between sort of research programs, collaboration with industry and education programs, to be able to create something which is much more all-encompassing and if you like, hopefully much more sustainable in terms of where we do. The more you integrate everything, the more it is, the more you create a sustainability in our partnerships.
Thanks, that's good. We have another question, which is about the value that's created for KI and also for the company, what they actually retrieve from KI. I guess that's going to depend on the type of partnership, right?
It's going to depend on the kind of partnership. It's going to depend on the kind of projects we use. But what I mean, if you turn the question on its head, well, what does the company want from us? They want research excellence. They want to access experts in the field that understand the disease, and particularly experts that are working in the clinical space, people that see patients every day, that really understand the need of those patients, and to be able to access data, to be able to answer questions which are relevant for them. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about obviously now is around real-world evidence health outcomes. You think about, well, how can people working in industry to develop their clinical development plans for launching new products, but also post-marketing when they can understand the real value of their products. This is something that industry really struggles with. And if you think about how would industry gain information around patient-reported outcomes, for example, how do you access that? How do you access the patients? How do you work with those? And these are sort of things that we can provide through partnership. When it comes to what KI wants out of it, I can give you the high-level value for Karolinska Institute as an organization, but at the end of the day, everything we do in partnership is based on the engagement and enthusiasm of our PIs, of our researchers. And that really comes down to their own personal motivation and where they see the value for the research themselves in doing these kind of studies with industry. And hopefully most of them that are doing it see the value not just in terms of a pot of money, if you like, coming to their research, but it's actually a way to understand the relevance and the importance of their research and create some kind of value together with their industry partners.
So we have a few questions from different people, which I think are linked. So I'm just going to fire them all at you and hopefully you can keep track. So one question is, what do you think of maybe some kind of electives within industry for master's students which could solve the transition gap? And then some questions from Facebook is, can students get involved? I guess that means, can students actively get involved in this kind of corporate partnership? And is there any kind of willingness to happen for this to happen? Or do we need to signal that in some way as students?
I think it's good that students as an organization signal it and say, I mean, I've been working with the medical faculty and students here at KI, and they have a number of people that are working with industry engagement, and so they're signaling the need, and they sit at a number of decision-making boards all the way up to the KI board. So they have influence, and they say, yeah, we want this for our students. We want to be able to work closer with industry. We want that. So absolutely signal it. Signal it from your end, signal it from junior faculty, from all the different student organizations that work for lobbying KI decision makers and stakeholders, and make that happen. So I think that absolutely I would encourage that. There's nothing to say you can't then come directly to me or to other people and say, I think this is something that we should try and bake into our projects that we're running with industry. And I can raise that question because I sit on a number of steering groups for those industry partnerships and say, well, here we have people who want to learn, who want to have some experience for that. You can reach out to me individually, and I can try to make things happen within the ongoing projects and within the ongoing partnerships. When it comes to electives and master's programs, I'm all for it, but yeah, I'm not probably the right person to make that happen. But I think absolutely there is room for that, and to get those to happen here at KI. I think one of the things I didn't mention actually is that KI is putting a lot of effort into increasing mobility, workforce mobility here at KI, and understanding how one could work with that, how one work with different actors, and it all comes back to things like incentive structures and mechanisms, whereby, in my case, having worked in the industry for a few years is actually regarded as a merit, and not just a 6-year gap in my publication list for when I want to come back to industry. So there's a lot that needs kind of fixing at that level in order to create the mechanisms of the incentives so that people can quite happily, easily transition between academia and industry. I think that answers your questions, Amy. Or
yeah, I hope so. I mean, if it doesn't, then all the other viewers, you feel free to fire up.
I can anticipate I may get email bombed. I didn't put my email address in the thing, but I'm happy to take these discussions offline if anybody has an interest and was enthused by some of the things that we did, because it's easy for me to lift up those questions and see, well, okay, well, where would we want to go?
Yeah, if you're happy for us to share your email address, if anyone's interested, they can just contact.
It's on KI's homepage, so it's public, so anybody can ask me anyway. So
So if you are interested and want to ask something more in depth, then you can do that.
Sure.
Just have a couple more minutes. So any questions that are coming in? Anyone?
I can throw out a question if there are no more pending on Facebook. Just generally of the partnerships that KI has today, where have they been initiated? Have they been initiated from the research side, or have the industries come to KI and say, we'd like to work on this project, who can we connect with?
They're initiated all over the place, basically. So they are initiated. I mean, a PI builds up their own contact networks. They meet people when they give lectures or when they're at a conference, and those networks and contacts are fostered and may lead to a partnership. The Janssen partnership came because somebody from the industry kind of understood that they wanted to do something with KI, and they just reached out to me and said, "Hi, Richard, can we work together to make this happen?" Which we did. That's when I didn't understand what real world evidence was back in 2015. But so that was cool. That was a good learning for me, because I had to read up and understand who the major, if you like, stakeholders and people I could work with at KI to make things happen. But Megan, it happens. It happens in all shapes and forms. Yeah.
As do most collaborations.
The hardest way of working is for KI to approach industry and say, we're interested in doing this, and trying to find an industry partner that would want to partner with us. But we're in a fairly privileged position, is that we're always being approached, basically. Yeah.
I guess from the position of my office, having alumni who have either graduated from a program at KI and moved to industry and are looking back to a university for collaboration, it would be natural to look for your alma mater and vice versa if KI is interested in a certain area and we are aware of where our alumni have gone.
There's certainly room for improvement in using the alumni for doing that. Yeah, sure.
So as our own students move on to the next phase, then
Sure.
keeping in touch with them could be important.
Sure.
Okay, I think we have just time for one final question, which is from Facebook about what the outlook for partnerships looks like, and whether it's more focused towards medicine or more focused to things like market access. I guess it's what kind of topics you mostly are working with.
So when it comes to this kind of research, in the past is mostly around clinical development, market access kind of questions. But the nice thing is that we're now seeing that the possibilities are endless in terms of more earlier studies around medicine, disease mechanisms, identifying new mechanisms and new targets. But then the challenge then is to make sure that we do that in a manner where we are very careful about what data we bring into a collaboration and how we bring it into a collaboration. And the basic principles that we followed in the past is that we provide an external partner with the possibility to access data, but there's no data transfer. So everything happens within the walls of Karolinska Institute, and then they collaborate with them, with an external partner, and keeping everything firewalled and maintained. So there are some sort of, if you like, practical challenges as to how to work with data in another way. But the whole field, not just Sweden, I mean, as a university, but the healthcare providers, the whole infrastructure, if you like, for being able to work with healthcare data in Sweden is in some form of transformation. And the purpose of that is to be able to work with other kind of questions and create value across the board by working with this data. So that development is absolutely going to happen, and it's nice to be part of that. But everybody is moving towards that, towards if you like, a similar end goal at the end of the day.
Thanks, Richard. That's been really useful. Thanks everyone for watching and for asking good questions. If you enjoyed that event, then please check out our Facebook for more information on the events to follow. And we hope to put on some more interesting events. Sorry, we're just trying to share the slide which has our upcoming events on so that you can all see. But anyway, they are all available on Facebook for more information, and you can of course contact either myself, Carla, or Camilla, and we have all that information for you anyway. So thank you to Richard, and thanks Megan for helping us out with this.
Good, thank you very much.